Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a really crucial topic. Marketing operations, or MOPs as you often hear it called.
That's right.
Now, if you're working in B2B marketing, maybe especially in SaaS or consulting IT services,
Right.
well, understanding MOPs isn't just like a nice to have, it feels pretty essential now.
It really is a strategic imperative, you could say.
And you listening, you're probably familiar with, crafting campaigns, engaging customers, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But today we're diving into the engine behind it all, the part that makes sure things can scale up, and critically, you can actually measure the results.
Exactly. We're shifting focus a bit from the what message and who, which audience, to the how, the mechanics of execution.
Okay.
How do you make sure it all runs smoothly, efficiently, effectively? It's really looking at that underlying infrastructure. That's what allows brilliant strategies to actually land and, deliver repeatable success.
Okay, so our mission today is pretty clear then. We want to define what marketing operations really is.
Yep. Nail that down.
Show why it's just so vital for growth, especially sustainable growth, and sort of illustrate how it powers up the whole revenue engine.
Couldn't have put it better.
All right, let's dive in then. What is marketing operations really at its core?
Okay, so fundamentally, marketing operations acts as the strategic backbone for the whole marketing function.
Backbone, okay.
Yeah. Think of it like the central nervous system. It's responsible for the systems, the technology, the data, making sure that data is reliable, the processes, how things get done, and the infrastructure for measuring performance.
Right.
It underpins, well, pretty much everything from capturing a lead initially all the way through to tracking how effective your campaigns are, the attribution piece.
So if I'm thinking about, say, demand generation, they figure out the message, the audience.
The what and who.
Right. Then MOPs is the expert mechanic,
Yeah.
making sure that message actually gets delivered properly, tracked carefully, analyzed across all the different platforms and teams involved.
That's a great analogy, yeah. It's like having a fantastic race car driver. That's your demand gen strategy, maybe. But MOPs is the perfectly tuned car and the expert pit crew making sure it performs lap after lap.
Gotcha.
You could also think of it as your internal growth accelerator. It's not always the flashiest part of marketing,
No, often quite hidden.
Exactly. But it's absolutely essential for getting those consistent, scalable results, making sure all the pieces work together in harmony.
Okay, backbone accelerator. I think I'm getting a good picture. So what does a MOP's team actually do day to day? What are those key responsibilities we should know about?
Right. Well, the scope is pretty broad, which shows you how central it is. First up, there's MarTech management, marketing technology.
All the tools.
All the tools, yeah. Overseeing and optimizing that whole suite of software the marketing team uses, your CRM, like Salesforce or HubSpot, marketing automation, maybe Marketo, Pardot, all those pieces.
Right.
Then, a huge one, data governance and analytics. This is critical. MOPs make sure your data isn't just clean and organized in one place.
Which is hard enough sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. But crucially, that it actually provides actionable insights that help you make smarter strategic choices. It helps shift marketing from maybe feeling like a cost center guessing to being a real revenue driver guided by solid data.
So they're the ones making sure all these different bits of software actually talk to each other and that the numbers we're looking at are, well, trustworthy and tell us something useful.
Precisely. They also design and manage campaign workflows and automation, building efficient processes.
Right.
This saves a ton of time, obviously, but it also guarantees consistency. Every campaign doesn't have to be built from scratch,
Avoiding reinventing the wheel.
Exactly that. And then there's lead lifecycle and routing, another critical piece. Managing how leads come in, how they get nurtured through the funnel, and then really importantly, how they're passed over to the sales team smoothly at the right time.
That handoff.
Yeah.
That can be a friction point if it's not managed well. Seems like MOPs is key there.
Absolutely vital for revenue. And following on from that, they handle budget management and performance reporting, tracking the spend, measuring ROI, figuring out what's actually working and what's not in terms of initiatives.
Makes sense. Keeping track of the money and the results.
And finally, maybe the most strategic piece, cross-functional alignment, especially with sales, obviously, but also revenue operations, RevOps, and IT. MOPs acts as a bridge, making sure everyone's working together towards those shared revenue goals.
Wow. Okay. That really paints a picture of how embedded MOPs is or should be in the wider business strategy, not just a marketing silo.
Definitely not.
So let's talk about why it's so critical. Especially for B2B companies aiming for serious growth. Marketing leaders are under massive pressure, aren't they? Do more with less, prove the ROI.
That's the name of the game today, absolutely. And that pressure is exactly why a strong MOP's function isn't just, a nice addition. It's a necessity.
Okay, so what are the key reasons?
Well, first off, operational efficiency at scale. Simple as that. Without MOPs bringing in standardized processes, automation, marketing can just become chaotic, reactive.
Yeah, I've seen that firefighting mode.
Exactly. Teams end up reinventing the wheel constantly. Lots of wasted effort, duplicated work. MOPs stops that. It builds the frameworks for efficiency.
Right, like having blueprints instead of building from scratch every single time.
Precisely. Second big reason, visibility across the funnel. MOPs owns the performance dashboards, the attribution models, the campaign analytics. They give you that clear, data-driven view of what's actually working, and just as importantly, what's not.
You can't fix what you can't see.
You really can't. You need to know where your efforts are paying off and where they're falling short to make smart adjustments.
Makes total sense.
Which brings us neatly to point 3, data-driven decision-making. The MOP's team builds and maintains the systems that ensure your choices aren't based on gut feel or, what seemed to work last time.
Or just anecdotes.
Right. But on clean, centralized, actionable data. This leads to much better strategic choices, better outcomes, especially in B2B, with longer sales cycles. Having that solid data on engagement, campaign impact, MOPs provides that. It helps justify the spend, too.
Yeah, flying blind with marketing decisions today just seems incredibly risky.
It really is. Fourth point, technology integration and optimization. Think about the modern MarTech stack. It's complex.
Oh yeah, so many tools.
CRM, MAP, intent data platforms, enrichment tools. It's a whole ecosystem. MOPs is the function that makes sure these tools actually connect, work together seamlessly, and deliver the value you're paying for. If they're not integrated properly, you're leaving money on the table.
It's like having amazing machines in a factory, but they're not connected or calibrated to work together. You need someone orchestrating it.
Excellent analogy. Exactly that. And finally, fifth point. Stronger cross-functional alignment. We touched on this, but it's huge. RevOps, sales, IT, even finance. They all rely on the systems and the data integrity that MOPs manages. So MOPs becomes this crucial bridge. It unites all those revenue-focused teams around shared goals, shared data, a single source of truth, ideally.
So it's not just making marketing better in isolation, it's actually making the whole revenue generation process smoother and more aligned across the company.
Exactly. That's the strategic impact. Now, despite all these clear benefits, lots of B2B teams still struggle. We see it all the time. Tools that don't talk to each other, systems operating in silos.
Dirty data, duplicates everywhere.
Yep. Dirty, duplicated data is a classic. Slow campaign execution because the processes are clunky.
Yeah.
And maybe the most frustrating, unclear ROI. Nobody can quite figure out what's driving results.
And it's tempting to blame the people or just say, oh, we're growing fast, things are messy.
Right. But often these aren't really people problems, they're operational problems at their root. And this is where we need to think about strategic marketing ops.
Okay, strategic MOPs. What's the difference?
Well, instead of just reacting to problems as they pop up, constantly patching things, putting out fires, a strategic approach means proactively tackling those underlying scalability issues, building a foundation that's resilient, efficient, and designed for future growth, not just fixing today's headache.
So it's designing the reliable system up front rather than constantly fixing breakdowns later.
Exactly. And, just as a concrete example, you have teams like the CI Digital team at Cyberspring. That's what they specialize in helping B2B companies streamline this exact infrastructure.
Right.
They focus on connecting the data, integrating the tools, aligning the teams, all to help companies make faster decisions and execute more efficiently. That kind of expertise can be really valuable when you're trying to move from that reactive mode to being more strategic and proactive.
That makes sense. Provides a clear picture of how you tackle it. So, okay, let's say someone listening recognizes these challenges in their own company. What should they prioritize if they want to build or scale up a MOP's function that's actually, future-proof?
Good question. There are a few key pillars, I'd say. First, invest in the right roles. You need skilled people.
Talent is key.
Absolutely. People with real expertise in marketing tech platforms, data analytics, process optimization. Maybe you need an automation specialist or a data guru or someone focused purely on process improvement. Identify the biggest needs.
Okay.
Second, Audit your tech stack regularly. Seriously, look at the tools you have. Are you actually using them to their full potential? Are they still the right fit for where the business is going? Don't be afraid to, sunset tools that aren't pulling their weight anymore.
That's a good point. It's easy to just keep adding software without reviewing what's already there.
Yeah.
Tech debt, but for marketing.
Totally. Third, align really closely with revenue operations. With RevOps, we've talked about this, but that tight integration between MOPs and the broader RevOps function is just critical for overall efficiency and hitting those shared revenue targets. They need to be partners.
Makes sense. And the last pillar.
And finally, don't over-engineer it. Be pragmatic.
Keep it simple.
Or at least start simple. Tackle the biggest pain points first and then iterate. Resist that urge to build some incredibly complex, perfect system right out of the gate. Those often become too hard to manage and maintain long-term. Start smart, scale smart.
Really practical advice there. Okay, before we wrap up, maybe we can clarify a couple of things I know people often ask about. First, that distinction between marketing ops and rev ops. There's overlap, right?
Yeah, it's a common question and an important one. They are definitely linked, very closely linked. But RevOps has a broader scope.
Okay.
RevOps looks at optimizing the entire revenue engine, sales, marketing, customer success, the whole journey. Marketing ops focuses specifically within the marketing function, making sure marketing runs efficiently and contributes effectively to those bigger RevOps goals.
So MOPs is like a crucial department within the larger RevOps strategy.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. They have to work hand in glove, but their primary focus areas are different.
Got it. That clears it up. And the other question, does every company need a dedicated MOPs team or function?
Look, I'd say any B2B company dealing with, complex sales funnels, using multiple marketing channels, or managing a growing MarTech stack, the answer is almost certainly yes. They will benefit significantly.
Even small ones.
Even if you're not big enough for a whole team yet, even just one strategic hire focused on marketing operations can make a massive difference. As your marketing gets more complex, having someone dedicated to keeping the engine running smoothly becomes less of a luxury and more, essential for predictable growth.
So complexity is the trigger, really. As marketing scales, the need for dedicated operational focus grows alongside it.
Precisely. You reach a point where you can't just wing it anymore.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful, really clarifying. The big takeaway for me is that MOPs isn't just admin, is it? It's truly strategic.
Absolutely.
It's the engine driving that predictable pipeline, enabling data-backed decisions, making sure campaigns can actually scale effectively. It feels less like an option and more like a competitive advantage now.
That's exactly it. It's about building a marketing machine that's efficient, measurable, and totally aligned with business goals, not just doing marketing tasks in isolation.
So as you're listening to this, maybe take a moment to think about your own marketing engine. How efficient is it, really? How effective? Are there areas where perhaps a more strategic operational focus could unlock some serious growth you haven't tapped into yet?
A worthwhile question.
Definitely something to explore further.
Yeah.
And, for those of you looking for some expert help in modernizing that engine, remember, there are resources out there like the CI Digital team at Cyberspring we mentioned, who specialize in helping companies make that leap from raw data to really impactful, measurable marketing outcomes. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive today.
My pleasure. Great conversation.